Finally, Rhonda's shift was coming to an end, and she kept looking at the clock, feeling a bit nervous. Dan was supposed to pick her up from work any minute now. It had been almost a year since Rhonda started working at this hair salon. It was a place with lower prices than its competitors and mainly staffed by beginners who needed to gain experience. After that, they could either work in a more expensive salon or start their own business. Rhonda dreamed of having her own hair salon, but given her financial situation, that was just a dream. A couple of years ago, all roads were open to her. After finishing school, she enrolled in an economics program. She did well in her studies, but not well enough to qualify for a scholarship. However, her mother encouraged her, saying, "Don't worry about money, your job is to study, and finances are my concern," and she took care of everything until her untimely death in a car accident. Rhonda's grief over losing her only close family member overshadowed everything. She didn't even want to live anymore. She had no other relatives, her mother had been raised in an orphanage, and Rhonda knew nothing about her father. She had friends, but as they say, who needs other people's problems, and Rhonda had plenty of problems. Now she had no money to pay for her education, and the apartment they lived in was rented. Soon the landlady came and, realizing that Rhonda couldn't pay the necessary amount, allowed her a week to vacate the premises. Rhonda rented a room from an elderly woman and moved there. The new landlady learned about Rhonda's story and said, "I won't charge you rent for the first 6 months, you can clean the apartment for me. I'm old, and it's hard for me, but you'll get on your feet soon, find a job, and start paying rent as usual." Rhonda didn't know how to thank her. After retrieving her documents from the college, she went to the employment service. It was there that she was offered free hairdressing courses, and again, Rhonda believed that fate had smiled on her. Gradually, after her mother's death, she began to recover. Time does not stand still, and life must go on. After completing the courses, the employment service gave her the address of a social hair salon they had an agreement with, and Rhonda had been working there for 9 months now. She wasn't exactly happy, but it was better than nothing. The salary, although small, was enough for her housing and food. One day when Rhonda was getting ready to leave, a young man ran into the hair salon, surprising her. The guy didn't get his hair cut there at all. "Hi, please help me. I urgently need a haircut. It's a matter of life and death," he smiled, but there were only 5 minutes left until closing, Rhonda murmured, not knowing what to do. "You're my only hope, dear girl, and I'll drive you home wherever you want, even to the end of the earth." Smiling at him, Rhonda gave in. While she was cutting his hair, the guy told her that there was a family celebration the next day, his father's anniversary, and he needed to be there in full dress. In the rush, he completely forgot to get a haircut, and when he called his hairdresser, whom he had been going to for many years, it turned out that he was booked for 2 weeks ahead. "And if my mom sees me at my father's anniversary with a beard and such a hairdo," and she put it, "I'll regret being born. Thank God I was passing by and saw you. I knew right away that you wouldn't refuse me. You have a kind face." Miranda smiled shyly. She couldn't help but notice that he was handsome, cheerful, and joking a lot. In short, a very interesting young man. Such people always attract attention. "And what do you do? What does your job entail?" the girl asked. "I'm a programmer. I sit at the computer and don't get out much, to be honest. I almost forgot about my father's anniversary. Luckily my mother is always on top of everything. By the way, my name is Dan, and yours?" "Rhonda, but that's it. Dan, take a look at your new haircut. I hope you and your mother will like it." The young man critically examined the haircut from all sides, and his face suddenly became serious. He turned to the girl, who was tense, and said, "You know what, Rhonda?" The girl looked at him with frightened eyes, trying to understand what he didn't like, but the guy suddenly smiled widely and continued, "You have golden hands, not just hands. Has anyone ever told you that? You're impeccably good at cutting hair." He turned back to the mirror, and the girl breathed a sigh of relief. Impeccably? He continued to praise her. Get ready, I promise to give you a ride, and I'm at your disposal. The girl didn't refuse. When they got into the car, Dan asked, maybe I can invite you to dinner, there's a great cafe nearby. Oh, I think that's not very convenient, Rhonda whispered. Great, then let's go, Dan smiled and started his car. From that day on, they met almost every day, and Rhonda never stopped thanking fate for him. He was 27, and she was 21, she felt calm around him. But one day, something she never expected happened. They were returning to the car from the shopping center when Dan was called. Turning around, the young people saw a man in a solid suit and a well-dressed woman. The faces of both were displeased. Dan, what are you doing here? The woman asked sternly, as if a boy was standing in front of her, not a 27-year-old man. Who is this young woman? The woman looked over Dan's companion appraisingly. Mom, Dad, meet Rhonda. Dan was visibly nervous. And what about Eunice? Exclaimed the mother. We've discussed everything with you. Did you call her, Mom? Let's not now. I'll come home, and we'll talk. Dan's mother immediately pursed her lips and turned away. The man looked disapprovingly at his son, and Rhonda felt uncomfortable. Dan, noticing this, said, Dear, don't pay attention. My parents are always dissatisfied when something doesn't go according to their plan. I understand their plan is Eunice, right? Rhonda clarified as she got into the car. And who is she? She's my mom's close friend's daughter. They've been dreaming of us getting married for years. Eunice is willing, but I don't like the idea. In short, I am not interested in their plan at all. But if I understand people even a little, whispered Rhonda, I can tell by looking at your mother that she always gets what she wants, Jill. Marry you off, no matter what. Oh, don't talk nonsense, she just doesn't know you yet. We'll come over sometime, and she'll change her mind right away. You're the best, Eunice is no comparison for you, I just adore you. Rhonda melted from such words and thought, my God, he loves me, what could be more important in life? And soon, she started noticing that she felt unwell in the mornings, she was nauseous. At first, she thought she had been poisoned by fresh food, but when the discomfort lasted for a week, she realized it wasn't poisoning. The landlady was the first to guess the real reason. Are you pregnant, Rhonda? Do you think so? The girl covered her mouth with her hand in surprise. It didn't even cross my mind. I've been thinking about everything I could be sick with, but not pregnancy. Well, of course, you'd better have thought about it earlier. Didn't you know that children arise from relationships with men? The landlady shook her head. What are you going to do now? I don't know, the girl blushed, but I know for sure that Dan won't leave me. He loves me, and I think he'll be thrilled to have a baby, God willing, girl. God willing. The woman smiled with a slight sadness. The next day, the doctor confirmed Rhonda's pregnancy. 6 weeks, the term of your pregnancy is 6 weeks. Are we keeping it? Asked the doctor, who looked carefully at the visitor over her glasses. Of course, Rhonda nodded. What else? Well, I don't know. Many women of your age run to terminate it, so I'm asking, the doctor said. No, I'm going to give birth, Rhonda replied firmly. Well, that's great, said the doctor with a smile. Life is different, but if a woman has a child, then everything else is not so important, believe me. In the evening, when she met Dan, he noticed that his girlfriend was acting somewhat mysterious. Did something happen? He asked. She nodded. Or speak up, you're intriguing me, smiled Dan. And he hugged Rhonda. Dan, this is very important. We will soon become parents. What? The guy didn't understand at first what was being talked about. Well, he's still tiny, only 6 weeks pregnant, but the doctor said that before we know it, he'll be born. Isn't that great? She looked at him with eyes full of happiness and love, but the guy didn't know what to say. After a moment of silence, he said, "Listen, I just remembered that I have to finish something urgent. I'll take you home, okay?" "But we wanted to go to the cafe," Rhonda said, confused. "I said I have business to finish, and as for the pregnancy, think about it twice. A child is good, but not right now. I'll give you the money for the abortion, and don't expect anything more from me." "What are you saying, Dan?" Rhonda almost cried. "That's what I said. I'm getting married soon, and my wife will give birth to my child. Rhonda, let's skip the drama. It's not a tragedy for you. You'll have an abortion and move on. The time will come, you'll give birth to another child, but not from me." She didn't say another word. The whole day, the girl looked out the window, swallowing tears silently. She couldn't beg him because of her pride. When she got home, she quickly got out of the car when he called her and handed her the money. She looked at him with a hateful look and walked away. "Suit yourself," she just heard him say. They never saw each other again after that day. At home, Rhonda locked herself in her room and let her emotions out, and when she came to work the next day, another surprise awaited her. "What do you mean you're pregnant?" The salon owner looked at her with disbelief, and it didn't bode well. "And what's the due date?" 6 weeks, Rhonda muttered, staring at the floor. "My dear, did you read the employment contract when you started working here?" "Oh, well, not carefully," Rhonda justified herself. She lied, of course, like many. She didn't read it at all. She checked her passport details and signed, not knowing what was written in it. Sad, but if you had read it carefully, you would know that I don't provide a job for pregnant women. The contract says that you cannot get pregnant while working here, and in case of a violation of this clause, you will be fired. So, choose either you do something with that problem and continue working here or write a resignation letter. But how can that be? Rhonda looked around in confusion. What should I do? Aren't there any options? The owner shook her head negatively. Well, can I have a few days to think? Okay, let's do it. I expect you here in a week either with a medical certificate or with a resignation letter. Thank you, Rhonda replied and went home. Walking down the street, she couldn't hold back her tears. They kept flowing down her cheeks. A week? What can I do in a week? They won't hire a pregnant woman for a job, but I need to live on something. Maybe Dan will change his mind and help me. The girl didn't know what to do. Thank God she had a place to live. But a few days later, the landlady knocked on her door. How are you, Rhonda? How are you feeling? The elderly woman asked. I came here. I didn't even know where to start. I have a son, remember? I told you. He lives in a neighboring town, so they bought a big house outside the city. He called me yesterday and said, the woman fell silent for a moment, seemingly choosing the right words. Don't hesitate, Mrs. Holick. I'm ready for anything, Rhonda encouraged her. Well, in short, he told me to pack my things, sell the apartment, and move in with him. So, you need to find a new place to live, dear. Rhonda couldn't believe her ears. It's impossible, she thought to herself. But everything can't fall apart like this all at once. It's even not a black stripe, it's the bottom of a black abyss where everything drags her down more and more. But looking at the elderly woman, she only said calmly, I understand you, Mrs. Holick. I'll leave as soon as possible, and thank you for being so kind to me all this time. The woman left, leaving Rhonda to contemplate her dire situation with no home, job, or husband, and only a child to care for. Should she consider getting rid of the pregnancy? At least then she would have a job. As evening approached, Rhonda resigned herself to going to bed, planning to visit the hospital in the morning. She couldn't see any other way out of her predicament. That night, Rhonda had a dream of her mother, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. Her mother was standing on the opposite bank of a river, smiling at her but shaking her head disapprovingly. The next morning, Rhonda changed her mind about going to the hospital. She believed in signs, and her mother's appearance in her dream felt like a sign. After all, her mother would never have allowed her to make that terrible step in real life. After breakfast, Rhonda decided to visit Dan's parents. She sat on a bench in their neighborhood, waiting for someone to show up. Although she had never been to their house before, Dan had shown her the house where he lived. She tried calling him, but he didn't answer. She suspected that he had blocked her number. While waiting, an elderly woman sat down next to Rhonda, and they struck up a conversation about the weather and other trivial topics. The old lady shared that she was waiting for her grandson. Suddenly, a car pulled up to the house, and Anne's mother got out. Rhonda apologized to her companion and approached the woman she was pinning her hopes on. Mrs. Weston, she called out to Dan's mother just as she was about to enter the building. The woman turned around and gave Rhonda a withering look. "Mrs. Weston, I wanted to talk to you. I'm Rhonda, your son's girlfriend. You see, there's a problem. I know who you are, and I know what your problem is. Dan told me everything. And let me tell you this, in 2 months, Dan is getting married. Not to you, as you understand. It won't be you who gives birth to our grandchildren, it will be Eunice. All you are capable of doing is ruining our gene pool. You were given money for an abortion, but you refused. You're proud, I see. But I'm not proud. I can make the offer again if you've changed your mind. I haven't changed my mind, I just... And if you haven't changed your mind, then forget about coming here. You're not welcome here, do you understand? Solve your problems on your own. If you come here again, you will regret being born." With that, the woman turned and went into the building. Understood, in the middle of the street, Rhonda didn't know what to do. It never occurred to her that people could be so cruel and arrogant. She slowly turned around and went back to the bench, where the strange elderly woman was still waiting for her grandson. "Has your grandson been brought in yet?" Rhonda asked the elderly lady. "He won't be brought in, he is already walking fine on his own. And I see you didn't hit it off with Marilyn. Oh, she's such a poison snake." Rhonda stared at the woman. "Do you know her?" "My name is Sarah Weston, and of course, I know her. Marilyn Weston is my daughter-in-law. I guess my grandson got into this mess. Are you pregnant?" Rhonda nodded and absent-mindedly put her hand on her belly. Suddenly, a taxi pulled up at the house, and Dan got out, helping his blonde companion out of the car, and ran toward the building. Rhonda wanted to run to him, but the elderly woman stopped her. "Don't humiliate yourself, it's useless. I know my grandson, he doesn't even say hello to me. I come here every day. I am watching him and my son, Dan's father, and that's all I have left. Marilyn, that snake, turned everyone against me." "You're shivering, my dear," she said, suddenly worried and looking at Rhonda. "You're all cold, let's go to my place. I live in the next house, we'll have some tea and warm up. You don't need to get sick now, especially in your condition. Trust an experienced pediatrician. Let's go to my place." Rhonda didn't resist, she had neither the strength nor the desire. As she looked around the house, she noticed the very high ceilings and spacious rooms. While Rhonda was looking around, Mrs. Weston was making tea with rose hips. "Sit down, dear," she said. "The tea is ready at the table." The woman asked Rhonda what had happened to her and what she wanted from Marilyn. "That means soon I'll have a great-grandchild," Mrs. Weston smiled. Having finished listening to Rhonda, and Marilyn didn't want to admit it. Did she? She just wants to take control of everything. My son was good and kind until he fell in love with her. But now, all their conversations revolve around connections and money. She doesn't want to hear about anything else. My husband, Thomas, passed away from heart failure 10 years ago, and now Marilyn and my son are waiting for me to pass on too, so they can get my house." "Why do you think they're waiting for your death?" Rhonda asked curiously. "Well, they told me so themselves," Mrs. Weston smiled sadly. "A month after my husband died, I had a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. The doctors saved my life. While I was in the hospital, I thought my son would help me get back on my feet. But the next day, I was unpleasantly surprised. He was sitting by my bed, talking to Marilyn on the phone. He thought I was asleep, so he didn't choose his words. That's how I knew my son was waiting for me to die so he could finally have my house. The thing is that my husband and I had already given it to him a long time ago. But in the notary agreement of donation, there was a clause that my husband and I live in it for the rest of our lives. When I heard my son's terrible words, I threw him out of the ward. But of course, from that moment on, I realized that my son was no longer mine. Unfortunately, I don't have much time left. The doctors told me I've had end-stage cancer. But I didn't tell my relatives about it. The doctors gave me 2 or 3 more months, no more. And I'll tell you this, you can live with me during this time. It's a pity, of course, that I won't see my great-grandchild. Although fate sometimes smiles on us, who knows, maybe the doctors are wrong." She smiled so kindly that Rhonda's heart ached for this kind woman, so understated. She didn't really have a choice, but she knew that things would work out somehow. "Don't worry ahead of time," Mrs. Weston calmed her. "Deal with problems as they arise. But I have a feeling that everything will be fine for you." Time passed, and Rhonda's pregnancy was progressing normally. She felt wonderful. Mrs. Weston lived for 5 months more, instead of 3 as she said. Fate gave her a little more time than the doctors did, and a month before her death, she came back home and said, "Rhonda, I was at the funeral home. I paid for everything and chose a beautiful tombstone for myself. Here's the phone number. When I'm gone, call them and give them the order number. They'll take care of everything. My relatives won't bury me properly anyway, and if they do, they won't spend a lot of money, at most a wooden cross. But I'll prepare everything by myself, and I'll be lying there like a queen." Rhonda listened, her mouth open. "Mrs. Weston, what are you talking about? Who orders these things while they're still alive? You should have told me. I would have done everything the way you wanted. Why go to such extremes? You won't even have time to say anything before they kick you out of here, believe me. And with you being pregnant, such hustle and bustle with the funeral is completely unnecessary." They didn't return to the subject again, and a month later, the elderly woman really started to feel worse, to the point where she couldn't even stand up. She called Rhonda and said, "Well, that's it, Rhonda. Don't say that, Mrs. Weston. I don't want to. I can't live without you." "How could this happen?" Rhonda said, swallowing her tears. "Stop crying. Better give me that envelope over there on the books." Rhonda quickly fulfilled the elderly woman's request. "Now open it." Inside, the young woman saw money and immediately shook her head. "Don't be silly, this isn't for you. It's for my great-grandson, a gift, so to speak. There's not much there, but it'll be enough to rent an apartment for a while and buy a stroller and a crib. Don't spend it too fast, though," she smiled, "and don't cry. It's not good for you, I'm telling you, as a pediatrician. And there's one more thing I didn't get to do. Take this sheet with the address, go there and pick up my new photo for the tombstone. As you know, I have no one else to ask. I ordered one at first, but then changed my mind. I decided to splurge on a ceramic one. So, pick it up and change the photo on the tombstone. Oh, and in general, come visit me, it'll make me very happy. And now, call an ambulance, young lady. I don't want to die here, you should stay here until my relatives come. But you should start finding an apartment, and don't forget my request." Rhonda called the ambulance, and Mrs. Weston was taken to the hospital. The young woman decided not to wait for anyone. She packed her things and moved to a hostel for now while she found a new place to live. 10 days later, the elderly woman passed away. Mrs. Weston was wrong about one thing. Her relatives came to the funeral in full force. Rhonda watched the procession from afar. When everyone had left, she came closer to the grave. After standing for a while, she left too. Soon, she gave birth to a son, and at Mrs. Weston's request, she named him Thomas, in honor of his great-grandfather. While at the maternity hospital, she was advised to turn to the Mother and Child Center, which took her in until she found work. Rhonda was happy. As Mrs. Weston said, problems must be dealt with as they arise. She couldn't have been happier with her son, and now fully agreed with the doctor who had said that nothing compares to motherhood, and all problems fade into the background. A year after Mrs. Weston's death, the funeral agency manufactured and set up a tombstone. Rhonda took a photo that had been with her and went to the cemetery to fulfill the promise she made to her grandmother before her death. Armed with a screwdriver, kindly provided by the cemetery guard, Rhonda easily unscrewed the old plaque. As she removed it, several folded sheets fell out, sealed in cellophane. Rhonda unfolded them with trembling hands, and running her eyes over them realized that it was a farewell letter. Sitting down on a bench, she began to read it through her tears. The letters instantly blurred from the tears that suddenly welled up. My dear Rhonda, if you are reading this letter, then I am very glad that I was not mistaken about you. That means you fulfilled my request. I hope my great-grandson and you are doing well. And here's what I wanted to tell you. You must take your passport and go to the bank at the address I wrote below. Go to the head of the bank, she is waiting for you. Of course, you will have a question about the difficulties with the photo. I'll explain right away. I wanted the passions over the inheritance to subside and my relatives to calm down. They have already forgotten about you. For sure, you will be able to settle everything calmly. And if you knew what I planned, you would refuse, and I would feel very uncomfortable. And now I no longer care. I hope you'll keep visiting my grave because there is no one else for me. Be happy, girl. Upon arriving at the bank, Rhonda was in shock. The head of the bank told her that shortly before her death, Mrs. Weston had opened an account in her name and transferred all her savings there. This was a very decent sum of money. All this belonged to Rhonda. The young woman couldn't believe what was happening. Soon, she bought a small apartment, furnished it with what was left, and opened her own hair salon, as she had always dreamed of. She had many clients because during her pregnancy, she did not lose her talent. Everyone praised her, calling her hands golden. However, she treated men with great caution and decided to raise her son alone. But fate had its plans. When Thomas turned 5, a wonderful man came into her life who was also raising a son. Andrew was a widower. He came to get a haircut and then brought his son. Soon they discovered that their children went to the same kindergarten. One day, the man invited Rhonda to take a walk with their children, and she did not refuse. A year later, they got married. When the children were 7 years old, the family was walking in a shopping center, and Rhonda was called out by a woman's voice. Turning around, she saw Mrs. Weston. Hello, Rhonda. You look great. I see everything is going well for you. Which one of them is my grandson? You are mistaken, Mrs. Weston, Rhonda said in a cold tone. Your grandson is not here. Do you remember what they told me then? So, I'll remind you. Eunice will give birth to your grandson, and I will only spoil your previous gene pool. Understand, Mrs. Weston? It was a difficult time then, so I'll remind you. I didn't know that Eunice was not planning to give birth. They have already been divorced for a long time. You must understand me as a woman. By the way, Dan has not been lucky with women until now. He married 3 times, all of them were the wrong ones. You know what, Mrs. Weston? Everyone gets what they deserve. Rhonda smiled. And you got it in full. Children, let's go. Your grandparents are already waiting for you. The young family left, and Mrs. Weston remained standing, tightly clenching her lips to keep from bursting into tears. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.